The official Israeli position on the Syrian Civil War had been neutrality since the onset of the conflict. However, it has been involved in the Syrian Civil War in political, military and humanitarian aspects. Despite its neutrality, Israel has been opposed to Iran's involvement in the war, as well as the growing entrenchment of Iran forces and proxies in Syria in general. Israel's military role in the war has been limited to missile strikes, which were not officially acknowledged until 2017. The Israeli Air Force campaign in Syria against Iranian forces has been officially termed Operation Chess. Israel has provided humanitarian aid to Syrian war victims from 2013 to September 2018. An effort that drastically ramped up since June 2016 when Operation Good Neighbor was launched by the Israel Defense Forces. Foreign involvement in the Syrian civil war includes many countries, including Iran, which Israel is concerned could gain more regional influence. Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah are suspected of carrying out attacks against Israeli positions on its borders with Syria and Lebanon, and Israel carries out airstrikes against convoys transporting weapons to these organizations. The neighboring states of Israel and Syria both came into being in the late 1940s but never established diplomatic relations, and have technically been in a state of war since 1948. They have fought each other in three major wars: the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the 1967 Six-Day War, and the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Both countries were later also involved in the Lebanese Civil War, including the 1982 Lebanon War. Prior to the Six-Day War, there were intense hostilities centered on demilitarized zones, water issues, and both shelling and infiltration from the Golan Heights, which have been occupied by Israel since. Israel is required to leave the Golan Heights by UN Security Council Resolution 242. But since the Yom Kippur War, the de facto border between the countries in 1974 reverting to the 1967 Purple Line, which has largely been respected by both Syria and Israel, though not by Hezbollah. A series of incidents had taken place on the Purple Line in the initial phase of the Syrian Civil War, straining Israel-Syria relations, including the Quneitra governorate clashes, incidents between the Syrian army and Syrian rebels on the Syrian-controlled side of the Golan and the Golan Neutral Zone, and Hezbollah involvement in the Syrian Civil War. Through the incidents, which began in late 2012, as of mid-2014, one Israeli civilian was allegedly killed and at least 4 soldiers wounded. On the Syrian-controlled side, it was estimated that at least 2 unidentified militants, who had attempted to cross into the Israeli-controlled side of the Golan Heights, had been killed. Israel's official position is neutrality in the Syrian conflict, as per various Israeli defense ministers. In early July 2017, Israel's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman said that while the rebels are not our friends, they are all versions of Al-Qaeda. Israel could not allow a man like Bashar al-Assad to remain in power. Keeping Assad in power is not in our security interests. As long as he is in power, Iran and Hezbollah will be in Syria. He said that Israel had no interest in entering the Syrian civil war. But there were red lines Israel had set, such as the smuggling of sophisticated weaponry to Hezbollah and Iran's presence on its borders. Later in July 2017, the Israeli government said it opposed the ceasefire agreement in southern Syria that the United States, Russia, and Jordan had reached a week prior that envisaged establishing the escalation zones along Syria's borders with both Jordan and Israel, as that would legalize Iran's presence in Syria. In October 2017, Lieberman conceded that Assad was winning the war and was now being courted by foreign powers, which he said was unprecedented. The statement was said to have marked a reversal for Israel, where top officials had from the outset of fighting in 2011 until mid-2015 regularly predicted Assad would lose control of his country and be toppled. He called for the US to be more active in the Syrian arena and in the Middle East in general, and noted that Israel was struggling to deal with the Russians, Iranians, and also the Turks and Hezbollah. On the 9th of July 2017, A new ceasefire agreement directly brokered by the United States and Russia for southwest Syria was announced. United States and Russia have made multiple attempts in the past to reach an agreement for establishing a ceasefire in different parts of Syria. However, the earlier ceasefire attempts failed to reduce violence for long. United States President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin reached the agreement during their meeting at the Group of 20 summit in Hamburg, Germany, on the 7th of July 2017. It affects towns, villages and borderlands in 3 regions close to Jordan and Israel. The deal includes establishing the escalation zones, OTH,